The All About Nothing podcast may have content and language that isn't appropriate for some. Listener discretion is advised. With Zach King, Trent Clark, and Barrett Gruber, this is the All About Nothing podcast.
All right, is everybody ready?
Wait a minute, I don't notice the excitement. Are you guys ready?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Now,
That's
the
better.
Campbells, you can't
That's
see me. You might need to move over a table if you want to get a good view, unless you're happy not looking at me. It's a pretty big company you would be in. All right.
Zach's the president.
Well, I would like just to quickly introduce and thank Barrett Gruber. Raise your hand. That's
Hi.
Barrett. And Zach King.
Hello.
Good morning.
They are from the All About Nothing podcast. They were based in Columbia, but they have moved, and they are now based out of Lexington, South Carolina. So they had to get up at the crack of dawn to be out here with us today, and for that, we thank you. These two gentlemen came to my attention, and by the way, there's a third person in your trio.
Yes, Trent, a.k.a. DJ Alonzo, could not be here today.
But he could not be here. He's still sleeping in?
No, just to give credit to Trent, he actually hosts the drag brunch at the venue in Columbia, South Carolina on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings. So that's a paying gig, and it's difficult to get him away from the paying gigs. So it's so
you're
it's just
saying
the
if
two
we
of
had
us.
paid him, he'd show up?
If you had paid him to DJ. he would have
Okay.
showed up. Yeah,
And he's really good.
Breakfast won't cover it.
he's fantastic.
And if you're going to speak, there is a microphone there, so you can get recorded.
You can pull
you
as
two
close
have to
as you
share a
need.
microphone,
We don't mind
unfortunately.
sharing.
So these two gentlemen came to my attention last year as I ran for office as a first-time candidate. These two guys contacted me and asked me to be on their podcast. Apparently, they were going around to all of the Democratic first-time state house candidates and looking to give them some coverage, looking to get some insights. Because first-time candidate, nobody's beating down your door to talk to you. Something is wrong with these gentlemen that they were beating down our door
We were.
to talk
100%.
to us.
We have certificates.
And so I heard from some people that I've met on the campaign trail, like, ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Duncan is here. He ran for office, State House 14 in Lawrence. He was on their show. A number of people who were running for office were on their show, and then they knocked on my door, and I was like, well, let me give this a shot. I don't know if they have any listeners, but you know what? Just the fact of speaking and getting your message out and rehearsing it was worth it. So I welcome you. I've been on your show twice since then. Developed a good friendship with Barrett. Developed an enemyship with Zach.
He's an Eagles fan.
Hey now, we're all Democrats. Remember that.
Not all
Remember that.
Eagles fans.
So I floated this idea about, hey, why don't you do a remote recording here at our breakfast meeting? And the turnout was fantastic.
It is.
I know some people have had to leave already, but we're up. We were over 80 attendees,
Oh,
which is
fantastic.
for an
fantastic.
off election cycle year in August. That's pretty damn good.
And with no alcohol.
So the first. Well, maybe you didn't. Exactly. Speak for yourself. So my first question for you two is, how come Michelle Brandt was never on your show? If you've reached out to all the first-time candidates,
the whole
why
time
was
she was
an
talking,
absent?
I was like, whoa, we need to talk to her.
Yeah,
So
and-
we're going to have you now. You're in. You're locked in.
And to be honest, I knew of your name and I followed you on Twitter. So that was generally how I connected with most of the candidates. But honestly, so the idea is that basically through the summer of 2022, we generally take off most of the summer because we don't record a whole lot. There's not a whole lot going on. But because
And you're lazy.
was ultimately lazy kids,
Kids.
Michelle knows. We take off for a few weeks. Well, I gave Zach and Trent the time off and said, well, let's just, what I'll do is I'll fill that time with bonus episodes of me getting interviews with candidates. And I think I started with Sidney Clinton, who was also out of Charleston. I started with Sidney Clinton and Ryan Thompson. So I had them actually come into the studio at Columbia because Sydney was actually in school at the University of South Carolina.
So let's pause there. Did you realize we had a candidate run for office as a college sophomore last year?
I'll give you one better. she was not 21 years old when she began her campaign. So there were events that I know that she had at local places around North Charleston and that area that she couldn't drink at because of her age. So Ryan Thompson, also very young. I think he was 22 or 23, but both of them fantastic candidates, and ultimately I've developed relationships with them that are I continue to reach out to them in hopes that they will continue to be active in the party. But as well, Ryan actually just moved to Columbia. He started a job in Columbia. So, but yeah.
So Zach, what is your role in all of this?
I had my ideas for politics and things. Barrett is kind of the expert on it. So they would bring candidates in and be like, listen, I'm going to have two morons with me. And they're going to ask you dumb questions. But they turned out to be pretty good questions. And then we make frenemies with Bill and Daniel and Matt Villardebeau. We've actually had fun reviewing right-wing films with him, which is great, how the election was stolen, things like that. So that's pretty much it.
Zach also does some pretty impressive voice impressions.
I do.
Can we hear you do Trump getting his 15th federal indictment?
His 15th. I went into the courtroom. I said, wow, that's a lot of indictments. I didn't do it. Don did, Don Jr. Dirty Nancy Pelosi. And dirty all about nothing, no podcast.
Calm down, Zach. Your moment in the sun is done.
I have more. Stay after the show. I'll get up here and just run through them. Dirty Bill Kimler.
So this was actually a very niche thing you did. There wasn't anybody out there doing that. The only other group that reached out to me to do an interview was a news organization from Spartanburg. And they brought a bunch of people up and just did one-on-one interviews, and it was nowhere near as fun. They didn't do Trump impersonations. They didn't do any of that stuff.
Well, and we are the all about nothing. It can go from politics to sports to...
Yeah, I brought you on board because of your focus on politics, and then you've pivoted into a Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
We did.
What the heck?
Yeah, this was actually an idea of Zach's. And
figures.
It was basically the idea, because there are a lot of podcasts out there that actually do recordings of them playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was in high school. I played Dungeons and Dragons with friends. I call them friends. I don't, so the idea was that we would just record ourselves playing Dungeons and Dragons. So the first 3 episodes of that are probably going to be a little bit
rough.
Yeah, they're going to be a little rough as far as the sound goes, but we're going to be recording again here soon in the next month or so, and those will be better. But you'll want to listen to the first 3 because you'll know how the adventure is going.
Yes, we're nerds too. So.
Dungeons and Dragons, if you don't know, is basically, it's a role-playing, storytelling. We have a gentleman that I work with that is a pseudo-professional dungeon master. I'm pretty sure he gets paid for it. We don't pay him for it. But I think that he actually gets paid to do birthday parties and things like that.
How many of you showed up this morning not expecting to hear the phrase dungeon master spoken at our breakfast meeting? Yeah.
So one of you.
So, Michelle, have you ever been on a podcast as part of your campaigning, or have you been on any type of media interviewing?
Yes, in Charleston, I was on the Holy City Center.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of them.
Yeah.
I was on that. I was extremely nervous. And then I was interviewed by Quentin Washington. Don't watch the episode. I was very
I happen to have it here in video if you want to flip to that now.
He was asking me some pretty gnarly questions, but I was terrified. I was like a deer in headlights. Now I'm more comfortable talking with people, but I think those were the main 2 that I did.
That's exactly how it was the first time I showed up. I think I had a jacket. I dressed up, and then you 2 were like in shorts and flip-flops.
Yeah.
Just totally casual. So I completely felt overdressed that first time. And you're right. It was my first podcast ever. So the nervousness was there, but you guys just put everybody at ease. It's just people chatting.
Yeah, that's all it is.
And I do want to give a shout out to GOT Sound Studios. It's a black-owned business. I used to play guitar for a hip-hop group that the owner, Dominique Stewart, who runs it, we went back to him, and once Trent got on the podcast, and we were like, let's support a black-owned business. So everywhere he's gone, we move with him and set up the podcast studio, and he does a great environment, so it's excellent.
And honestly, the guy that owns the studio, Dominique, he is also an artist. His artist name is Neek the Geek. He's on Apple Music, Google Music, Spotify, everything, and absolutely one of the greatest talents that I have come across and recognized. And on top of that, he is because he runs that studio. He engineers all of the music and artists that come out of there. And ultimately, he has. I worked in radio for years in Atlanta. I was a disc jockey on the radio. And
Can you tell by his voice? Of all of us, he's got the radio voice.
Yeah.
Smooth.
But even I worked with sound engineers in 30 radio stations in my lifetime, and Dominique has one of the greatest ears. So if you have children or family members or friends that are interested in even just trying to do anything musically or have just an idea, conversations with Dominique will set them in the right direction. Absolutely. And then he can offer to record and set it. It's one of those things like my mother asked for me to sing a rendition of the City of New Orleans for her birthday a couple years ago. And
what's wrong with your mother?
Arlo Guthrie fan, yeah.
That's an odd request.
Yeah, she loves Arlo Guthrie too.
Yeah, but she loves your singing. That's the point.
Well, she claims
made the singing listenable.
Yeah, he did. He no auto tuning except for one little piece. But he's just an incredible talent and can make anything sound good as long as there's a basis to work with, of course.
So coming back to the political interviews you did,
sure.
In addition to the first-time House reps, you also interviewed Lisa Ellis.
Yes.
For the state superintendent. By the way, she was robbed.
Yeah,
she was
agreed.
robbed. That lady who's in there now who faked her master's degree, Ellen Weaver, just absolute sad. She wants to tear down the public education
She took
system.
a piece of our clip of our show.
But do you want to talk about how you ruined Lisa Ellis's
we didn't ruin
campaign?
it. She just took everything out of context. When you don't read the first and last chapters of a book, you're not really getting the whole story. So just take your part as you want.
Yeah.
So Ellen Weaver took a part of your interview out of context,
Yes.
took a little sound snippet, and then used it as an attack ad.
Yeah, and we let her have it too. So,
and if you haven't seen it, essentially what it was I asked, because I did not genuinely know what the job was to be the superintendent of an entire state school system. And ultimately, I got to believe that Ellen Weaver wouldn't have been able to answer that question either. But at least Ellen gave us an answer of.
Lisa gave you an answer.
Lisa gave us an answer of that when she gets into that job, she has the experience of teaching for years previous to that to be able to have an idea of the direction that the state needs to go. And Ellen, who I think even admitted in an interview that she had never stepped into a public school before she began her campaign, was ultimately, I guess the moral of the story is that if you pay enough money to Bob Jones University, you too can get a master's degree.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Now, you also interviewed Judd Larkins, who ran for Congress on the Democratic ticket. Do you guys remember Judd? We had him here as a speaker last year. Young man, he has his roots in '96, as a matter of fact, but ran against Joe Wilson.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was a fun interview.
Mm-hmm. We enjoyed having Judd on.
But what happened to Judd?
Well, Judd...
And these people may not know what happened to him, so if you want to share.
Judd lost by a lot. And then within a few weeks after the election, Judd decided that he felt more like the Republican Party was his base than the Democratic Party. And of course, I don't have context on his decision. I've spoken with Judd several times since then and have not been able to decipher an answer. We've invited him to come on the show so that we can talk about it, because ultimately I'm not going to pass judgment on someone making a decision like that if they have valid reasons. To which my valid reason was, is Joe Wilson terminally ill? That would be a good reason. Is he retiring? Do you know something? Because that's a seat that's been held by Joe Wilson for 20 years. And I think that the likelihood is, unless there is just an overwhelming candidate, that in Lexington at least, people are going to continue to vote for Joe Wilson, sadly. He has no message. He has no policy except to blame everything else on the Democrats. And for me, I liked the idea that Judd was at least running against him, but I told Judd throughout his campaign, you're not trying. This isn't a campaign that you're running against him of substance. You're aligning yourself with him. So when he announced that he would switch parties, I'll be honest, it felt kind of like this was something he had planned from the beginning. Sadly, because Judd, I think he's young and he's intelligent, and I think that he would have been someone that would have inspired more young candidates to come out and vote. Now I think he's hurt that. If he does have aspirations for politics in the future, I think that it's potential that it's not going to go well, because I've already seen backlash from Republicans that don't want him in their party. And I don't know that the Democrats would openly welcome him right back in, because it's flip-flopping. It's not he's not being consistent. So
now you've also scored an interview with a presidential candidate.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that.
So I'll start by thanking Bill, because Bill invited me to the convention. You want to? Yeah, there we go. Bill invited me to the convention a few months ago in Columbia because he had an extra seat and he thought that I needed a meal. We saw Marianne Williamson before at the pre-party walking around, and she gave a little bit of a speech for a few minutes, and then I noticed when we were sitting down for dinner that she was just sort of walking around. It almost looked like she was looking for someone to engage with her.
She did look a little lost and lonely.
Yeah. So I said, I'm just going to go talk to her. So I got up and I went over and shook her hand and
Biggest
asked her,
fan.
Yeah. I asked if I could take a picture with her, and then after the picture, I asked her. I said, we have a podcast that's recorded here in South Carolina, and we interview candidates, and I'd love to see if we can get something scheduled. And she immediately said, I'd love to. Email me, send me the details, and our campaign will get on it. And sure enough, it did happen. I got a phone call on a Sunday, or I got an email on a Sunday evening about 7 o'clock, and said, if you can do it in an hour, we can go ahead and do it, because she was in London where her daughter was having her first grandchild. So it was an interview that was done at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night, where of course it was 1 a.m. in London where she was at. And honestly, I think that was probably one of the difficult things, because I think as soon as she got done with me, she had to go on Russell Brand's. Russell Brand is a British comedian who is fairly well known.
So she had to step down from you to do Russell's show.
Yeah,
that was quite a fall.
That. I saw the interview. I felt my questions were relevant.
Listen, you know what? I did not know that you only had an hour to prepare. And I've told you this, that it was one of the best political interviews I've heard. You know, I like a lot of what Marianne Williamson has to say, and you came prepared with a lot of good policy-focused questions. It was a really good episode.
Honestly, that's one of the things that I like to try to do when we have politicians on, party representatives. And we did reach out to Republicans last summer to try and get them on our show.
No, you didn't.
They don't know what podcasts are, though.
I did. Joe Wilson would not respond. I did try to get McMaster's office. I even offered to come down to the Capitol, and I could do it from his office, or we could do it from somewhere, that he feels more comfortable, old folks' home, something, whatever. But ultimately, none of the Republican candidates had any interest, because and this goes back to what Michelle was saying, is that we need more candidates to run. The Republicans in the state of South Carolina become so comfortable with their seats. I'm in District 88, and we have a guy there named R.J. May, who is an abomination to human society. He and I have argued in my front yard. So
this is a guy who's one of the key members of the South Carolina Freedom Caucus.
Yeah.
If you've heard of them, so they're very extreme, book banning. They filed lawsuits against their own school district.
Yeah.
Can you imagine legislators taking the time to file a lawsuit because a school carried a book? It absolutely insane.
Yeah. So R.J. May represents my district, and last election he basically ran unopposed, because the gentleman that we had on our show, Daniel Shreve, who was running against him, did not campaign. He basically put his name on the ballot.
Could I pause you for a second? Because I was going to ask you, of all the candidate interviews you did, which one was the worst?
The most awkward was Mr.
I wouldn't call it
Shreve.
the worst.
I said the most awkward.
It was awkward, but I would say it was one of the ones that if you watch the YouTube video of it,
Shall we?
Do you have it? Oh no.
He read a poem.
All right, so the gentleman that he's referring to, his name is Daniel Shreve, and I have a 2.5 minute clip of this guy that you actually have to hear and watch to believe. Now, what I want you to pay special attention to is Barrett's face. I want you to see his face as Daniel does what he's about to do in this clip. You ready? Can you guys see it from where you're sitting?
Thank you for listening.
All right, welcome back to the All About Nothing podcast. This is Barrett Gruber, Trent Clark, Zach King here with us, and this week our guest is Daniel Shreve, the Democratic nominee for District 88, South Carolina House of Representatives. Thank you for being here, Daniel. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is your first campaign, right?
Yes, this is my first campaign, yes.
And when it comes,
First of all, the guy talked just barely above a whisper.
Yeah.
You could hardly hear what he has to say. So I may have to bump up the volume at certain points just so you can hear him.
when it comes to campaigning, what have you found as far as like the difficulties in getting started? Because it's a big endeavor.
Right. Well, I'm just doing what I'm writing a book, and I'm going to try to donate the proceeds to children's charities here
Okay.
in South Carolina.
I saw that. Yeah.
So tell me about the book.
It's a poetry book, and it's got like story poems that I
Okay.
write. Yeah. I have a couple of them I could read.
He was
Oh,
sweating.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, no, that would be really cool. Yeah. So yeah, no, please. I'd love to hear a poem.
Well, it's kind of, I'll give, it's a long one, but I'll
Absolutely.
Oh, we got time on the All About Nothing.
That's Trent.
I call this one Blessings on His Side. He is tall, and he poses a striking figure of a man, and his classical Southern voice and style permeate confidence and a certain holiness and grace that makes all the men and women of his state feel in their hearts and minds that this man is great. When he stands at the podium in the State House and speaks, you see a modern-day George Washington, you see Andrew Jackson, and you see Robert E. Lee. This brilliant man is a religious man, and he relies on his experience and the revelations given to him by his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who empowers him with his guidance and leadership abilities to make command decisions in this mystical southern state to make it great and prosperous for its citizens. And Governor Henry Dargan McMaster is the greatest governor South Carolina has ever produced, and has the blessings and prayers of his citizens by his side and the Heavenly Father high in the sky.
That's interesting.
So, gonna kick him off the show?
Based on your writing, do I assume that you are a fan of Henry McMaster?
Well,
He wrote a love letter.
I'm not a diss fan of his, but you have to have bipartisanship. I have nothing.
Sure.
He's a good man. He's an older man. I mean, he's been in power for a while. He's been in politics for a long time, and I'm just having respect.
I just want to point out that as soon as he wrote that, as soon as he read his poem to us, the two guys sitting next to me, Trent and Zach, are both texting me, "We got to get this guy out of here." And again, I want to point out, that's the guy that was running in my district.
As a Democrat.
As a Democrat.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly.
So Michelle, did you write any love poems to a Republican leader as part of your campaign?
I think you just outed me. No, I'm just kidding. No, like that's why we have to vet our candidates, and we need to have primaries so we get the crazies out of the league.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we say we want every seat to be challenged, you want to have non-Henry McMaster love letter writing candidates looking to represent you. That was crazy.
He fell into the sign up on that one, I guess.
But the look in your face, Barrett, you look like you were about to bust a gut.
I didn't. Well, because as soon as he mentioned Andrew Jackson and Robert E. Lee, I said, the whole tone changed because he mentioned George Washington. I'm like, okay, there's reason to respect George Washington, especially if you've seen Hamilton. I mean, I assume that's accurate.
Right. So let me ask you, if that was the most uncomfortable interview, what was the best interview of a candidate you've done? And the answer is me. Yes.
I was like, you feel pressure to say Bill.
Let's watch a clip before you go giving the wrong answer.
You get a chance to say.
Oh my gosh, you had to pause that long?
Listen, Bill, you're going to come back on and you're going to get it.
So this is my second round. So this was earlier this year, as a matter of fact. So you'll see me a little more in a relaxed state than a campaigner.
All right, welcome back to the All About Nothing podcast. I'm Barrett Gruber, joined by Trent Clark, Zach King. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for hosting us, sir.
Yeah, of course. And the former candidate of South Carolina State House District 13 for Greenwood and Lawrence counties and current chairman of the Greenwood County Democratic Party and Zach's #1 fan. Everybody, welcome back to the show, Bill Kimler.
Bill.
Get him, Trent.
Oh, wow.
So the Democratic Party has this rule about diversity in their leadership. So there's specific rules. You vote on the chair first. Whoever is the chair, the first vice chair must be a different gender or identify as a different gender. Right? And then the second vice chair must be a different race than the chair. So you're enforcing these things. So, if a male gets the chair, you've just knocked out all the female candidates, right? And vice versa.
Okay. Does the Republicans use that same method for like diversity?
Yeah. So whoever's the chair, the first vice chair needs to be white and 10 years older. The second vice chair needs to be white and 10 years older than that. And the third vice chair has to crawl out of a crypt. So they got their own rules.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, Bill.
That's right.
I can dig it.
I was like, no way. Then you're like, well, yeah. I'm like, let's hear this.
Hey, it's perfect. He lined it up. That made perfect sense.
I thought you talked about it. I thought you guys had built that out before.
Nah, hell no.
Well, you want the crypt keeper, and then you want.
You have to have a QAnon.
Yeah. You gotta have the giant bowl of high C that bursts through the wall.
It has to be red hat, white hair, bald head.
Then you got to have the Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's right.
You have to have somebody from the Gravy Navy.
Yeah.
All dressed in his camo.
Then the rest of it's literally a shouting match. Who screams louder than everyone else?
Right.
Just a shouting match. I forgot about that.
All right. So you see why I love these guys. These guys have been inspiring, a lot of fun. Their podcasts cover a wide variety of topics, not just politics, but they also do some local events. Comic-Con's a big deal in Columbia. You're a big fan of the Columbia Fireflies, minor league baseball team. So you're talking with various people around the community. Now you're into D&D, which is okay. Got it. Barrett's character.
There's nothing wrong with that. My husband plays that, and so do I.
Heck yeah.
Sounds like you have to have them on your show now.
That's absolutely. We'll have a guest appearance for his character too.
Your character is a dwarf named Groupon.
Groupon.
Groupon. Okay, I thought it was Groupon. I listened to the show.
Groupon, and then ultimately the guy that is our D&D master, our dungeon master, he thought that's what people called, like friends called me, and it was a weird dynamic after that because he in conference calls and meetings he now calls me Gru.
Well, I wanted to say you've inspired me, and one other person inspired me. Kervin, are you in the audience? Kervin back there, he's also been a speaker of ours here at the breakfast meeting, but he does a podcast as well. What's the name of your podcast, sir? Speaking with Gravity,
nice.
And it's about mental wellness. He's a counselor in town, a therapist, and licensed as well, and he does a regular broadcast covering various topics. So I would say between having been on both your shows, you've inspired me and my friend Jumelle to give a shot at the podcasting world.
Yeah.
So I'm here to announce, if you haven't read about it in our newsletter yet, Jumelle and I have started a podcast called...
Oh my gosh, Black, White, and Blue in the South, and we love it. Yes.
Hey.
So I'm curious though. First, have you guys read it in the newsletter? Have y'all seen it? All right. Have you listened to it?
I have.
Yeah. You
was
got to
great.
check it out. You got to check it out. We're loving it.
We actually do our recording from the Greenwood Library. We rent the conference room and we set up our microphones and just riff there.
Yeah.
Our goal is to do one every other week, but we're actually having so much fun, we might increase the
I
frequency.
know. We set it up every other week, and now we're looking at each other saying, I got something to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's schedule another meeting.
2 weeks just seems too long.
I know.
You'll be behind the times by then.
You're right.
So we have 2 episodes in the queue now. So if you have a podcast feed, whether it's Spotify or iTunes or something else, you can look up Black, White, Blue, South, and you'll find us. Just look for that logo.
Yes.
Our 3rd episode is going to be a Dungeons and Dragons episode.
It can't be. I'm not prepared.
So bring your dice and have a character set up. I'm gonna be a barbarian named Shreve, and
You need to be a bard so you can sing it.
Are you guys fans of the show Community?
Yes.
Do you love the D&D episodes?
All
Okay,
of it.
Awesome.
Yes.
Wow. That's our to-do list, Bill. We got to figure that out.
it is.
Oh, Bear brought his dice.
Oh, look
Oh
at
my
that.
God, you came equipped?
You have potions?
You came equipped.
There is whiskey now. Yeah.
What's whiskey?
That one looks
It's evaporated. Yeah.
I don't think it's
Oh, wow.
Wait, don't smell it. What's he sniffing
What
it?
are those aphrodisiacs? what are they?
I know, right? Don't sniff that over here.
So when you play and you need health, he made actual potions that you have to drink, and they are liquor.
Oh my God. We're gonna have to cut that part out of this episode, otherwise, look behind you, Barrett. Yeah, exactly.
Look, I'm going to be honest.
Sacramental.
I'm a fan of Jesus Christ, and I absolutely, really, really hope that he was here and that he existed, and that the message that I believe that he came with is what he came with. I'm not quite certain what's going on with the stick man here, but I have that exact same tree topper for my Christmas tree.
That's right. So we're gonna wrap things up on that note.
I think we should.
Before lightning strikes
we
our
should.
table,
I was
Just allow me to step
or
away.
I'll burn to a crisp.
I was actually going to offer to bring marshmallows and sticks in case either one of us bursts into flames.
Oh,
so.
gosh.
So as we wrap up, we do want to open up. Does anybody have any questions from the audience that we can give you a mic and let you ask this illustrious group of people up here in front? I'm hoping not. All right, good. Well, with that, we thank you guys. We thank you for coming up.
Thanks for having us.
Look forward to this episode.
Can I just say one thing? So in August 19th and 20th is the Soda City Comic Con in Columbia, and they have graced us with the ability to have a table, and we're going to be there to interview patrons and things like that. And if it's something that doesn't sound like you'd be interested in going, I think you should still give it a shot. It's going to be a lot of fun, and again, we're going to be there. So we're hoping that we'll see a large crowd. We're going to be recording with some of the patrons and things like that. We're also going to be recording with some of the celebrities that they've gotten signed up.
Michael Biehn from Terminator.
Yeah. If Summer Glau, well, Michael Biehn also was. If you ever seen Tombstone, the guy that played Johnny Ringo.
Yeah.
He's okay.
And then Sean Astin from Lord of the Rings.
That's right. Yeah.
Sean Astin.
He's going to be there.
Anything Lord of the Rings, I want a part of that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
All
Sean
right.
Astin's going to
I
be there.
know that.
Yes, love it.
We're gonna be friends.
Okay, great.
So, but
Now
thank
you
you, Bill,
feel.
for having
That
us.
was for me.
My
This
pleasure.
was a
Thank
lot
you
of
for
fun.
coming down. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you. Thank
We're going to
you.
take some time to put the equipment back, and then we'll come back and finish up, talk about the Supreme Court real quick, and then give out our Volunteer of the Month.
Good job.
The All About Nothing podcast is produced and engineered by me, Barrett Gruber. Thanks to Cake for our intro music, Sick of You. You can follow everything Cake the band at cakemusic.com. Thanks to Muff the producer for our outro music. You can follow Muff on Instagram at Muff the producer. Thanks to Trent Clark, aka DJ Lonzo. Join him weekly at the venue in Columbia, South Carolina for the Saturday All-Star Drag Brunch and Sundays at the Review Drag Brunch. You can also contact Trent for all your entertainment needs. Trent at theallaboutnothing.com and on Instagram, TheRealDZ. DJ Lonzo. You can also phone him 803-262-7982. Thanks to Zach King. You can follow him on Instagram at KingZach07 and on Twitter at CarolinaKing21. I am Barrett Gruber. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Barrett Gruber or visit my Linktree/Barrett Gruber. Want to support the show? Visit our page, theallaboutnothing.com, and become a member. There are several tiers available, including memberships that give you early access to episodes as well as exclusive content. Visit theallaboutnothing.com. To find links to our social media, merchandise, and past episodes, as well as other details, visit theallaboutnothing.com. If you'd like to be heard on the show, you can call and leave us a message. Dial 803-672-0533. If the time between these episodes is more than you can handle, check out our partner podcasts. Zach and I host What the Pod Was That with Carrie Simmons. Visit whatthepodwasthat.com for links and details. Ami takes a deep dive down the rabbit hole in episodes of Welcome to Wonderland. Available on all of your podcast platforms. As well, you should check out DJ Lonzo's Top 5. Available on all of the podcast listening platforms. Please subscribe and share the show. If you're on YouTube, please like and hit the notification bell. The All About Nothing podcast is a product of Barrett Gruber Entertainment and Media. Thank you for listening.